You hear the term business transformation thrown around all the time, right? It promises this amazing, bold new future. But let's be real, how often does it actually deliver? Way too often, these giant, expensive projects just end up creating a digital version of the exact same old problems. So let's get into why that happens and what it really takes to get it right. All right, take a look at this number, $7.47. What on earth could this tiny amount of money have to do with a multi-million-dollar tech project? I mean, it seems totally random, right? Well, this isn't a hypothetical. This number, it's the key to understanding a really spectacular failure. And get this is a real story. A real company had a requisition for less than $8 that somehow climbed all the way up the ladder to the CEO's desk for approval. Now, this wasn't just some weird little system glitch. No, this was a massive, flashing red light, basically screaming that the so-called transformation had completely missed the point. See, the problem wasn't the $7. That was just the symptom. The real issue, the root cause, was that the company's brand new tech was just a shiny new wrapper on a totally broken process. The approval chain was so messed up that a simple request just sat there for over 45 days, escalating and escalating until it finally landed with the CEO. All they did was automate a terrible, inefficient way of working. This kind of failure is shockingly common, and what's really fascinating is that the disaster is usually set in motion long before anyone even logs into the new software for the first time. Let's look at how it all starts to fall apart. It's like a domino effect, seriously. First, the budget gets a haircut. Then, what's the first thing to go? The critical stuff, like change management, the part that actually helps people learn and adapt to the new system. Then, they choose the cheapest, least experienced vendor to save a few more bucks. The project team, now totally rushed, doesn't even take the time to really understand how things work now. So the goal just becomes a simple lift and shift. Just copy and paste the old, messy process into the new system. And this is what you end up with. You get a digital version of your old process, but it's often actually worse. Why? Because all those important little details from the old paper system, like maybe terms and conditions or critical data fields, they just get lost in the shuffle. All because the focus was on getting it done fast and cheap, not on getting it done right. So what happens next? People start creating workarounds. And this highway analogy is just perfect. The new process is like a totally blocked highway. A workaround is like a detour through side streets. Sure, it gets you moving for a minute, but it makes the whole trip way longer and more complicated. And as people keep adding more and more detours, the whole process becomes so slow and painful that eventually, everyone just gives up. The transformation has failed. So, how do we stop this from happening? Well, we have to start at the foundation with something that gets ignored all the time in the rush to get new technology: policy, the actual rules of the game. What's amazing is how simple these components are, but how often companies totally mess them up. For a policy to actually work, it has to be clearly written, clearly understood, and clearly communicated. But here's the key. There have to be clear consequences for not following it, and it has to be enforced. If you're missing even one of these five, it's all just words on a page that nobody pays attention to. This is such a brilliant way to think about enforcement. You don't actually have to catch every single person breaking the rule every single time. A lot of the time, just the visible possibility of being caught is enough to change how people behave, right? When you're driving and you see a police car on the side of the road, you instinctively slow down. The exact same idea applies in a company. Just knowing that the policies are being monitored is a huge deterrent all by itself. Okay, so we've got good policies in place. Fantastic. But even the best rules are pretty useless if you don't have the right mindset. It's not just about what you're trying to fix. It's all about how you approach the problem in the first place. Now, this is a really, really important distinction. An agile mindset is great. It's all about being creative and nimble and how you solve a problem. But design thinking asks a more fundamental question. It's an innovative way to make sure you're solving the right problem to begin with. It forces you to dig deep and find that root cause, so you know all your hard work is pointed in the right direction. And that naturally leads to another big question. What's the actual goal here? When we talk about a transformation, what does value even mean? For a long, long time, the answer seemed really simple. For decades, big projects like this were measured by basically one thing: savings. How much money did we save the company? That was it. But in today's world, that super narrow focus is actually a huge roadblock. It stops us from seeing the much bigger, richer picture of what a truly successful project can accomplish. Today, our definition of value is so much broader. Yeah, cost savings is still a piece of the pie, but it's just one piece. It sits right alongside things like innovation, reducing risk, sustainability and ethics, supplier diversity, and even protecting the company's brand. A real transformation delivers value across all of these areas, not just one. Which brings us to our final, and honestly, our most important section. We've covered processes, policies, mindsets, and value, but absolutely none of it matters without the single most critical component in any kind of change: the people. A new system doesn't magically give people new skills. A real transformation requires your people to develop new capabilities, what we often call 21st century skills. We're talking about critical thinking to see through the noise, real collaboration across different teams, clear communication, and a growth mindset that's all about continuous learning. Let this one sink in for a second. Technology is an amazing tool, but that's all it is, a tool. It can't understand context. It can't build a relationship with the supplier. It can't make a tough judgment call. People. People are the ones who facilitate the process, who make sense of the data, and who ultimately drive smarter decisions. Without skilled, engaged people, the best tech in the world is basically worthless. And who guides those people? Who sets the tone for the entire organization? Well, it all comes down to leadership. The leadership style in a company is often the one thing that will make or break any major transformation effort. This is the perfect way to think about it. Is your leadership in the front seat, hands on the wheel, actively steering with a clear view of the road? Or are they in the back seat, just kind of passively watching and yelling directions, expecting the team to just figure it out? A front seat leader sets a clear vision. A backseat driver just creates confusion and signals that this whole thing isn't really a priority. So, that's the ultimate question I want to leave you with. Next time you hear the word transformation, ask yourself this: are we just putting a new digital coat of paint on our old, broken ways of doing things? Or are we really, truly rethinking how we work, what we value, and how our people and our leaders are going to drive us into the future? The difference between those two answers? Well, that's the difference between failure and a true transformation.